Blessings, beloveds. So I'm just going to do a quick audio on the book that I mentioned yesterday, the Sabian Symbols book, because there seems to be quite an interest about it, which is great because it is a great book. So first of all, let me just show you guys the actual book in case you were wondering. This is it here, an astrological mandala, the cycle of transformations, and it's 360 symbolic phases. Now, this price here is outrageous. I suspect it might be because it's out of print and there's only, a small selection available. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out why it's actually so much. I've had mine for decades. In fact, I've even got the price in the front of it. I paid $13 for it. 13, right? And look at the price it's going for now. But I have had it for a very long time. It's even fallen apart, actually. In any case, you may want to hunt around. You might get lucky. One girl wrote on my social media when I posted something about this that she found it in a secondhand shop for $2, which was just really like, just a stroke of gold, really. She's just very lucky. It's very unusual. I don't think everybody would be able to, experience that, but it is a lot of money to invest in. And so I can understand if there's resistance, because it is a lot of money, but just have a look around and see what you can find. I guess what else can I say about that? But this is the book I'll be speaking about today. And first I want to start by saying, well, this is Dane Rudger's interpretation of what Mark Edward Jones and a lady called Elsie Wheeler put together. And so the book is Dane Rudger's interpretation, right, of the symbols and the imagery that this lady came up with. It was done a very, very long time ago. Look at her birth date, 1887. I want to get back to her chart in a minute. But before I do, I just want to say that the Sabian Symbols book it's literally right brain type of material. It's very subtle. It's based on intuition primarily, right brain. It's symbolic, based on metaphors. So when you read the symbols, they're not always necessarily easy to understand, especially if you're going through your left logical brain. Some of the symbols, you just read them and think, what the hell does that mean? I really just cannot understand that at all. And that still happens to me sometimes. And I've had this book for decades. Now, there are 360 symbols because there's 360 degrees in the zodiac. So just looking at today's chart, for example, this circle that you see here, this wheel, equals 360 degrees, which is the 12 zodiac signs. So, each sign has 30 degrees, times that by 12, we get to 360, right? Just very simply put. And each degree in each zodiac sign in the book that I'm talking about has a specific imagery that corresponds to it. And it's a cyclic process and unfoldment that unfolds through the entire 360 degrees, through the entire zodiac, in other words. So each degree, as you go to, so if you start at 0 Aries, and then you go to 1 Aries, 2 Aries, 3 Aries, etc., throughout the whole zodiac, what you're seeing is you are seeing an unfoldment of all the archetypes, the 12 archetypes, right? So from Aries through to Pisces, okay? And 30 degrees in each sign has a different symbol to it, a different imagery, a different picture, a different metaphor, but it is all a sequence that is unfolding, unraveling, evolving, manifesting, whatever word you want to use. So they're all connected, in other words, because everything is connected. Nothing is separate in truth. So it's just important to understand that, right? That's kind of what we are working with. That's why it's called an astrological mandala, the cycle of transformations, and its 360 symbolic phases. Just the title itself lets us know what this is about. Now, let's pretend this was your birth chart, okay? Because you can use the Sabian symbol book in a lot of different ways. It's a little bit like using the I Ching. It's like a modern version of I Ching, if you like. It's a little bit like tarot, if you like. It's a combination of all of that, really, and it draws from deep intuitive processes. And you can use it for your natal chart. You can use it for important transits. You can use it for secondary progressions. You can use it for anything, really, because, you know, whether you're talking about your natal chart, secondary progressions, transits, primary directions, any other type of technique, in whatever way you are working with astrology, we are always working with the 360 degrees, always, no exceptions. So this is a foundation. These symbols are a foundation for the meaning of each degree in this mandala, in this circle that you see, which we call a birth chart or a chart, right? So it's really, actually, I've found that it's like a journey unto itself working with this book, because what I've noticed is that as we ourselves, you know, grow and evolve and have different experiences, and therefore gain new knowledge, new wisdom, new insight, new understanding, we have different capacities at different times in our life to recognize or to see or to understand certain things. So, for instance, somebody might have said something to you 10 years ago and it didn't really make much sense. And then 10 years later, for some reason, that very thing that person told you, for instance, now suddenly just clicks, you know, it fits, it makes sense. Now you really understand it. It's a little bit like that with the Sabian symbol book. Sometimes you can read a particular degrees that corresponds with something in your chart, and you can read it and dwell on it and meditate on it. I don't recommend trying to understand it from your left logical mind, because it's often not going to make much sense at all. So you might read a symbol and you might think, well, that I don't really relate to that. I don't quite understand what that means. I don't really see that as a story or a part of the story of my life. And that will happen a lot, which is why I'm bringing it up. And then you may find that down the track, that very same symbol that you were reading now suddenly makes pure crystal clear sense to you, for whatever reason that is. That's happened to me so many times over the years. So there's that. Now, when you are working with a symbol, the basic premise is, let's say that, as I said, this was your birth chart. And let's say, you know, your sun is at 12 degrees of Aquarius. And so when you open the Sabian symbol book, you'll go to the Aquarius section, okay, and you'll locate the 13th degree, because the basic premise is that we look at the subsequent degree of any degree we are looking at. So if your sun is 12, which it is here in this case, if this was your chart, then you would read the 13th degree of Aquarius in order to get the meaning of what that solar sun presence at the 12th degree of Aquarius represents for you, for example. So it's the same principle with any degree you were looking at, even if it's your ascendant. Say you had 12 Aries as your ascendant, you would go to the, again, 13th degree. You always go to the subsequent degree. Now, having said that, I have found that sometimes, I would say this is more the case with the ascendant, with any degree on the wheel, on the outer wheel, okay? Because the position of all these planets that you see here in this chart, and let's just say this was your birth chart, they will be here all day, and in some cases many days or many weeks, depending on which planet we are talking about. The sun moves 1 degree every day, but everything else moves at a different speed. So my point is that if you were to look at the 2nd of February 2023, you'll find that, you know, all the planets are going to be at these degrees. Doesn't really matter what time you look at it. The only thing that would change in a day based on time would be the moon and something that is called the vertex. Where are you, vertex? There you are there. So the vertex and the moon are the fastest moving bodies. Now, the vertex is not a body, it's a mathematical calculation, which is extremely important, by the way. I'm pretty sure I've done a video on the vertex. It's probably an older video from like about 3 years ago. So if you want to hunt through my videos and check that out, I recommend it, because I've given some pretty great examples of the power of the vertex with some chart examples, for instance. If you don't know what the vertex is, because I don't want to teach that today, is why I'm mentioning that. But it's just important to understand that everything else you see here in the wheel of this chart, meaning all the planets and the asteroids, except the vertex and the moon, in a 24-hour rotation, are not going to move. Whereas the moon will, okay, and the vertex will as well. Again, those two have a different ratio in their movement, completely different actually, but they are the two fastest moving points outside of everything else. So it's just important to understand that. So why then am I saying that it's, when you're looking at the degrees of the ascendant, for example, or if you're looking at the midheaven or the descendant or the IC, well, these points here, which are called the cross of matter, are 100% dependent on a time of birth. The ascending sign, there are various signs that ascend faster. I just have to excuse myself for 30 seconds. My clothesline has fallen. Sorry, just 1 second. It's like being in a tornado in this area. It's just so windy. So the cross of matter, as I was saying, is 100% dependent on an accurate birth time. Now, most people don't have an accurate birth time. That's a fact. And I know this because I've been rectifying charts with my mentor for many years, and he's been rectifying for, I think it's about 45 years now. So a lot of people will be adamant, no, this is a hospital time, so, you know, it's got to be correct. Or, no, my mother's got a memory like an elephant, so the time's got to be correct. I just want to say one thing about that. Again, I've done a video on rectification. I recommend you watch that as well, just to get some understanding around rectification and why it's so crucial. Further to that, your mother might have a memory like an elephant, and her memory might be accurate with the time of birth, but there's there's an element of the astrological chart that is that the physical birth may have occurred at, let's just use this chart as an example, at 11:31:55 a.m. The physical birth occurred then, but the activation of the actual chart could have been 10 or 15 minutes before that. I've seen that happen, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of times. It's not unusual. It's hard to understand if you don't work with astrology, and if you don't rectify, and if you don't understand this principle, which is why I recommend you watch my video on rectification. I think it's called Soul Time, that particular video. So have a look at that if you are interested. In any case, going back to the Sabian symbols, let's just say that this was your time of birth based on a birth certificate. And so therefore you were born with 12 degrees and 8 minutes of Aries on the ascendant. And so you end up reading the 13th degree based on the formula that's suggested. Whatever degree you are looking at in the chart, you always go to the next degree in the Sabian symbol book. That's just the rule, as it were. And so let's just say you go to the 13th degree of Aries and you read it and you think, wow, this really just doesn't fit for me at all. I cannot see it in my life at all in any way, shape, or form. Sometimes it might be because, as I said, sometimes we'll read a symbol and we don't really connect with it. And then years later, we might connect with it, or months later. That's one explanation. And the other stronger explanation and more to the point would be that your ascending degree is actually not 12 Aries, because your time of birth hasn't been rectified. And so you're reading the wrong symbol. That's very typical, and it happens a lot. So what's the resolution to that? Try and get your chart rectified by somebody who knows how to rectify charts. You can certainly approach me for that, because that's something that I do. Or you can approach somebody else that you know who knows how to do that. In the interim, though, what you could do as well is whatever time of birth you've got, let's say you read the subsequent degree of your ascendant, for example, and it doesn't resonate. Sometimes what I would do is I'd go to the degree before, for instance. So instead of going to the 13th, I'd go to the 11th degree, and I might even go to the 10th. Or I might go to the 14th. Just read the degrees either side of this, probably twice. So 2 degrees before this and 2 degrees post this. If your time of birth is a bit iffy for some reason, right? That's a way around that, where you might find that one of the 4 symbols that you are reading will probably hit home, as it were. I'd expect that the ascending degree would resonate with you relative to the corresponding symbol in the book, because the ascendant is the soul incarnating into this physical world. So it's such a crucial point. It's the most fundamental kind of degree or point in the chart, really, outside of everything else, I suppose, because the sun's going to be in Aquarius all day. But the 12th degree of Aries on the ascendant, that is on the eastern horizon at this time of the day, 11:31:55 a.m., Aries, 12 of Aries is rising on the eastern horizon. That's what that is showing us. So that's going to change. It won't change in a few minutes, but it will change in a couple of hours. And so with that as well, you've got some signs rise a lot quicker and or a lot slower in the southern hemisphere, and then you've got other signs that rise a lot faster and a lot slower in the northern hemisphere as well. And you can check that out just by looking at different charts. Look at people born in the southern, look at people born in the northern. If you've got this program, you can animate the chart and basically have a look at this yourself. Let's just go 30 minutes. So I'm going to take it 30 minutes forward. So in 30 minutes, the ascendant has jumped to 18 now. And see that, right? I only moved it forward 30 minutes, right? Took it to 12:01 p.m. So in 30 minutes, the degrees has changed quite a bit, really, hasn't it? So if your time of birth was wrong by 30 minutes, then this is what's going on. You've got the wrong Sabian symbol. And further to that, and perhaps even more importantly, when you're talking about then looking at secondary progressions and transits to your ascendant and things like that, your timing is all off. That's what's going to happen. Here you are thinking that you've got, just as a way of example, oh, I've got Saturn coming to my ascendant this year. I know Saturn's not going to be in Aries this year, but I'm just using it as an example for this chart. And then you're waiting for this transit because you think you've got 18 degrees of Aries rising, and Saturn comes along and you're not really experiencing the Saturn transit. That's because Saturn's not on your ascendant, because you don't have the right degree rising. These are all really important technical details when it comes to working with the chart, right? People can be very sloppy, can be very, this is my right time of birth, I'm sticking with this, yada, yada, yada. I think, it's important to keep an open mind and just understand that there's so many reasons as to why a person's time of birth is not exactly accurate all the time. In fact, it's very rarely accurate. So the outer wheel, in other words, is moving quite fast, right? Because that's basically based on time throughout a 24-hour clock. Whereas the planets inside here, they're going to barely change at all in a day, as I said before. When you are dealing with secondary progressions, you can use Sabian symbols again, and I'll give you guys a great example here with Prince's chart. But first, before I do that, let me just show you Elsie Wheeler. So this is the lady that was clairvoyant. Look at that Neptune Pluto on her ascendant. That's, first of all, you rarely see that combination, right? Because it doesn't happen very often at all. I've just forgotten how long it takes for that to happen, but it's a long time. I've never seen anybody born with this conjunction in this life, that's for sure. And I haven't even seen a chart with this conjunction. This is probably the first chart I've seen with this particular conjunction in this sign. Now, the Sabian symbol for 1 degree of Gemini, which is what we would look at relative to the position of her Neptune, which is 0, 5 minutes, 0, Gemini, 5 minutes. So from the Sabian symbol perspective, we will go to, even though she's the one written this book, but this is going to blow you away. The first degree of Gemini basically says first of all, the heading is a glass-bottomed boat in still water. That's the heading of 1 degree of Gemini. The key phrase or keynote is the unconscious mind holds as many secrets as the ocean depths, which can be revealed to one who inquires. And there's just a little bit more to that as well, because that was kind of summarized. So I'd just like to read a little bit more. The keynote actually is the revelation of unconscious energies and submerged psychic structures. Now that, fortunately, in this example, is a literal symbol of who she was relative to that Neptune in Gemini and what she did. It's so literal. It cannot be more literal. And sometimes you will find symbols that speak literally and are not obscure and are not sort of difficult to understand because they're just very clear, like this one is, for example. So, and look at her moon, 29 degrees of Pisces. Yeah, this woman was just clairvoyant. Yeah, Neptune on the ascendant with Pluto there. That's such an incredible signature. And I've just read the Sabian symbol to you for her Neptune, which just says that she's psychic, basically. And she was. And this book that I'm speaking about today is really born through her visions. And I think she was blind and in a wheelchair, something to that effect. The book has a description of a little bit about her and her life story, which I'm not going to read because it'll just make this video really, really long. But if you do get the book, there's a little section there that talks about her and how this book came to life, how it happened. They basically just sat in a park and he was I think he was just verbalizing each degree of the zodiac, and he'd say to her something like, tell me what you see with 1 degree of Aries, for example. And then she would just go into that psychic zone and she'd connect with an image and she'd verbalize it, and bang, there it is. There's the 1st degree. And I think they sat there, I don't know, like it was such a long time. I don't even know if they had any breaks. They just went on for hours and hours and hours and hours until they went through the whole 360 degrees. So it's a pretty special, unusual, magical body of work, really, that has been around for a very, very long time. So what I wanted to show you guys, and then I'll wrap it up, and hopefully what I've shared today is enough to give you an understanding of the importance and power of using Sabian symbols. I mean, it just as a way of another example, you might look at the degrees of the upcoming Leo full moon, the Sabian symbol for that, which is, it's 16, so you'd go to the 17th degree. And there'll be a lot of people that won't resonate with what that symbol and imagery speaks to. And then there'll be other people that do. It's not necessarily the case that every degree with every symbol and imagery is going to hit home for every single soul. It just doesn't work like that, right? Because we're all different souls for a start. We're at different points in our evolution and journey, and we're all at different points in our ability to see, to resonate, to connect with the symbols, and the symbols of astrology and the symbols of this book, and the story and picture of our life and our perception, our intuitive capacity, our soul's eye vision as well. There's a lot of different things that come into it as to why one might see this and one might not see that at all. Further to that, I would also like to say that with each symbol, you've got to use your imagination, right? Intuition, imagination, and then your understanding of astrology, at least if you've got a basic understanding. So it's a combination of two, but to connect with the symbol, the imagery, you just really have to let go of the way the mind wants to try to organize it and delineate it and unpack it and understand it logically and rationally. You got to let that go completely, otherwise you won't arrive to the point of the symbol, which has to be experienced through imagination and intuition. However, like I said, in some cases the symbols are just so damn literal that it's just eerie, it's freaky, like the symbol that I just read for Elsie Wheeler for Neptune in her chart. Now, Prince, I thought this was really interesting. This is his secondary progressed chart, 2016, which is when he died. So he died at the age of 58. And so what this chart shows us, a secondary progress method is based on, just to keep it very simple, 1 day equals 1 year. So if you look at this chart, you can see it says 4th of August, 1958. Now, he was born on the 7th of June. So if you count from the 7th of June to the 4th of August, it's about 58 days. 58 days translates to 58 years. That's a secondary progress method, just very simply. So, in other words, this chart, all we've done is we have gone 58 days forward in the ephemeris to arrive at where the position of everything was, where everything was 58 days after his birth. And this is what it looks like. There's more to it than that, right? It gets a bit technical because it depends on which secondary progressions you're working with. And I don't use solar fire to do my secondary progressions. I use my own method, which is my mentor's method, actually, because it works. And solar fire secondary progressions, when it comes to the ascendant and the moon sign, seems to be wrong. Anyway, I've mentioned that before, and, you know, I'll just leave it at that. But in any case, this secondary progress chart you see here is not derived from Solar Fire's method. It is derived from my mentor's method. It doesn't really matter here anyway, because what I'm about to read actually corresponds to Uranus. Is it the sun or Uranus? The sun, rather. The sun. So from the time he was born, he was a Gemini at birth, right? And by the time he died, the sun had progressed from Gemini to 12 degrees of Leo. And I thought to myself, well, the sun is life, life force, the source of all life. And here it is in the 8th house. The 8th house certainly corresponds to death, to all sorts of deaths, psychological, emotional, physical, spiritual, etc. I've actually done a whole video on this particular chart and Prince's death. So I'm not going to go into the analysis of that, because once again, if you want to know more about that, there is a video on my YouTube channel where I talk about secondary progressions and transits pertaining to his transcendence. But today what I discovered was this. I looked at the Sabian symbol for the secondary progressed sun, and I thought, well, this is a little bit freaky, actually, because I hadn't looked at this before. So I'm just going to read it to you. So, secondary progressed sun upon his death, this is where it had arrived to. So to get the meaning of the symbol of 12 Leo, we go to 13 Leo in the Sabian symbol book, okay? The heading is an old sea captain rocking himself on the porch of his cottage. Now, you see that symbol there, when you just read that or just hear it as you did just then, you just think, what the hell does that mean? This is why we have to employ intuition and imagination. However, there's more to this. So let's go to the keynote. The keynote is the quieted mind's recollection of crises and joys long past. Now, I'm going to read the rest of the symbol, and once again, a lot of it may not make sense for you, but when I read the final 3 words, then you'll understand why this symbol is important, if not before that. The sea captain has steered the ship of his ego consciousness through seas and storms, maintaining the integrity of his individual selfhood while in close contact with the collective unconscious. Now retired, he may try to distill wisdom from his many experiences and from his victories over elemental forces. This is so freaking profound. If you know Prince's life story, what happened in his life, this symbol is absolutely freaky. I'll just continue reading the symbol. The swing of the child consciousness has now become a rocking chair from which one can contemplate past as well as present scenes, gently moving as waves roll over the shore. Peace at last. That makes the hairs on my body, stick up, which I really don't have many hairs because I'm not a hairy person, but just as a example, right? That really creates a shiver inside me when I read that symbol, peace at last. That symbol corresponds to his son having progressed to 12 Leo for when he died, when he left this world. So there's the power of Sabian symbols with secondary progressions. This is just one example, but I do believe this is an extremely powerful one and really just, nails it, just absolutely nails it and shows us the power of these symbols. Now, how did this lady, Elsie Wheeler, how did she tune into these images, these symbols, you cannot explain it from the conscious sort of intellectual, rational, logical mind. You simply cannot. And if you try to, you will just do your own head in. We cannot. This is where we have to abort, if you like, the left linear mind and embrace the vastness of consciousness, the process and gift of intuition, imagination, the power in all of that, which when we tune into that, we do actually, I think, we do relieve ourselves of a lot of anxiety and worry as well, because we are experiencing, embodying or feeling into a much larger understanding of what is at any given moment. The opposite to that coin is to be imprisoned by our own mind with the constant uncontrollable thoughts that flood through our mind on a daily basis, largely rooted in fear and worry of the uncertainty of what is. That's why, when you're talking about being a creative person, which clearly Prince was one of the most, he was a genius, just literally a genius, played every single instrument, wrote music, wrote lyrics, sang, had, I don't know how much music was in his vault. No, that hasn't even been revealed, I don't think. Anyway, the guy was just simply genius. That's all there is to it. And it takes creative genius is often, and I've done a video on this subject as well, is often seen when people have, see how he's got Venus in Taurus, Mars in Aries, Sun in Gemini. The first early signs of the wheel, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, there's so much creative juice and power in those first 5 signs. Unbelievable. And here's a prime example with Venus in Taurus, South Node in Taurus, Sun in Gemini, Mars in Aries. It's just so obvious to me. But I've actually looked at his harmonic chart as well from a creative perspective. I think that's included, or it's a separate video called Prince's 5th harmonic chart, speaking about creativity, because that's quite telling too. So anyway, they're just some added sort of extra points where if you want to hear it and learn about it, the videos are there available for free. So you're welcome to find them. So yeah, okay, I think I'll leave it there, and hopefully what I've shared today does demonstrate just indeed how powerful the Sabian symbols are and how they have this quality of mysticism and a mysterious knowing of life in a way that we just cannot explain by logic and reason. And somebody who is completely logical and just wants the sort of logical approach and answers to things, that they're just not going to connect to this video or this book or this way of understanding life. And that's okay. That's not a judgment. There's many people out there like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, we are drawn, we gravitate towards what our soul is ready to embody, understand, see, evolve through in any given lifetime, in different ways. That gravitational pull towards what surfaces in our life is Pluto. Pluto is soul, and Pluto gravitates towards the very thing that it is seeking to evolve through in any given lifetime. And that may be a lifetime of working as a, you know, purely creative genius type person, or a purely creative person, or a purely intuitive person working with intuition, imagination, imagery, things like, you know, it just depends what your soul is gravitating towards, right? Okay, I'm going to leave it there, and I will see you guys very soon. Hope you enjoyed this, and let me know in the comments. Yeah, questions, comments, etc. Okay, bye for now.